all comes out good. All right, bile factor. So what is bile? Bile is made, many compounds make up bile, but one of the most important ones are bile acids. They're also known as bile salts, which blend fats together during digestion so that your body can absorb them. Bile is made up of water, bile salts, bilirubin, cholesterol, different fatty acids, lecithin, sodium, potassium, and calcium. So lots of stuff in there. So when things aren't working and these things on your labs or whatever are low or not sufficient, or HDMA comes back and you don't have these and our people are dehydrated, then you're going to have bile insufficiency happening. So bile breaks down fats. Bile has lots of jobs, but these are just three of the main ones that we're going to talk about. So bile breaks down fats and absorbs fats. It removes toxins, and then the enterohepatic circulation functions as a detoxification loop between the gut and the liver. Um, and I have another whole talk on enterohepatic circulation, which we are going to do this Friday. I worked to try and get it today, but it didn't happen. I think we have enough info. Our brains are going to be on overload as it is. So, bile plays many roles in helping set the microbiome by regulating motility, by preventing SIBO, by causing the secretion of antimicrobial peptides, and promoting an environment that selects for commensal microorganisms over pathogenic ones. So bile is released by both the gallbladder and the liver. So there was a study that was done on bile excretion throughout the day, and when the data was collected and analyzed, the researchers found that physical activity caused a substantial increase in bile acid output into the duodenum. So bile acid output was 242 micromoles per 30 minutes in sedentary conditions, but increased almost tenfold um, in the exercise condition. So that's a pretty substantial increase in duodenal bile acids. But where the bile acids came from is even more interesting. The researchers measured changes in the size of the gallbladder to see if the bile was being released from there. But as it turns out, the gallbladder didn't decrease in size, it actually increased. So this indicates that the bile was not coming from the gallbladder contraction, it was coming directly from the liver. And it also indicates that physical activity may help the gallbladder fill to an even greater extent than when you're sedentary. So if you have anyone that has any issues with bile and fats, if they're sedentary, you're going to get a lot less bile formation from your sedentary clients. So physical activity may increase bile acid output into the duodenum by a factor of 10 in comparison to being sedentary. I thought that was a pretty cool study that was shared. So enterohepatic circulation, this is just, so we know what we're talking about here. So all of these green vessels, sorry, oh my gosh. All the green vessels are bile ducts. And then you have the common hepatic duct, which comes down here and empties into the duodenum about 4 or 5 inches down from the beginning of where the pyloric sphincter is. The gallbladder is tucked in here. So all of those bile acids were secreted directly from the liver, bypassed the gallbladder, and went right into the duodenum. And then obviously some of them did come back and fill up the gallbladder for use later. So just if you guys aren't aware of the anatomy there, I know we've looked at this a few times lately, so you should all be familiar with this by now. And then you have enterohepatic circulation. So once the bile is put into the duodenum, right, and goes through the small intestine, it is then retaken up into the portal circulation back into the liver. So this just kind of gives you an idea of how that works, and then where the bacteria is living in what bacteria is living in different parts um, of the circulation here. And there's, you know, lots of bacteria in the small intestine, but, millions here, but like trillions here. So, And that's what these numbers are, 10 to the third, 10 to the fourth, and then the further down you go, by the time you get to the large intestine, you're talking 10 to the 11 amounts of bacteria. So way more bacteria in the large intestine where it should be than the small intestine. In true cases of SIBO, overgrowth of bacteria can happen at any area within the ileum or the jejunum, and those who have bacterial overgrowth outside of the lower ileum area have obvious lack of bile, since most bile is not being passively absorbed and the majority of it is going to reach the lower ileum. The bile, if you look back here, right, the bile comes through, but it's being reabsorbed here in the large intestine and down here in the lower ileum. All through here, you're not getting as much bile reabsorption as you are at the end of the digestive tract. And remember, bile is antimicrobial. So that's why, that's part of the reason why, right, in the small intestine, you have lower amounts of bacteria. Bile acids are antimicrobial, but commensal bacteria, such as lactobacilli and bifido, are bile resistant. So if an overgrowth tries to occur, the location is generally closer to the cecum where the large amount of peptides are produced that regulate the size of those commensal bacteria.
Are those peptides that they're talking about like the GLP ones?
Yes, specific um, bile, what's the term for it? Bile receptor peptides. So um, we talk about it more in the enterohepatic circulation. So when the bile gets down to that lower part of the intestine, there's actually receptors that the bile attaches to, and then the peptides are released. So I believe GLPs, aren't they mostly in the stomach?
I don't think so.
Or are they lower in the intestines? I haven't done as much of a deep dive into it as you have. So,
Yeah, I thought they were. Yeah, I for some reason I want to say that they're also released. Aren't they released in the intestines? I don't know. I mean, obviously the stomach, but
right.
I thought there was some intestine stuff.
Are produced in the small and large intestines.
Okay.
GLP-1. Yeah. It's the intestines. It's both the small and the large.
Okay. So this is some of the endotoxin and pyrogenic response. So this is just how, I don't know why this is in the middle here, but this is how endotoxins create prostaglandins, which create fever in the body. And bile, obviously, one of the jobs of bile is to help remove the endotoxin. So since endotoxins causes a massive immune reaction, it's important to have a way to neutralize it so it becomes inert. So the way we do this is between the enterohepatic circulation that is involved in this process. So when bile circulates via enterohepatic circulation, it breaks up some of the endotoxin, rendering it harmless. The endotoxin that remains gets taken up by chylomicrons and transported to the liver for processing. Once it's processed, it gets dumped back into the gut via the bile. So bile also prevents endotoxin from entering the bloodstream by decreasing intestinal permeability, and this helps make sure it gets sent packing out the back door. Bacteria that contain endotoxin can be circulated between the intestine and liver via enterohepatic circulation and acted on by alkaline phosphatase and bile acids. By changing the chemical structure of endotoxin, alkaline phosphatase prevents the immune system from recognizing it, and then that inflammatory molecule becomes inert. Bile can also break apart endotoxin and prevent it from leaking from the gut into the blood, thus this decreases the overall inflammatory burden caused by endotoxins. That's pretty cool. The other thing that was mentioned in this whole bile, if there's lower bile and you're getting a lot of symptoms, zeolite can also bind endotoxins in the gut and help do that. So if you've got lower bile output, that will help any binder, right? But zeolites in particular can support the immune system by removing that trigger.
And why would we want that one particularly? Can you say that again?
Zeolites bind the endotoxins, so it'll bind to LPS and take it out of the gut.
Okay.
So if you're doing any gut cleansing, any dysbiosis, anything like that, and you're getting a lot of gram-negative bacteria like H. pylori or, other gram-negative bacteria that you're killing off, zeolite or a zeolite-containing binder will bind the LPS.
What is zeolite? Like, I mean,
Zeolite is a specific brand.
oh, okay, because
Um,
KBMO mentioned, charcoal for
Yeah.
binding.
For binding, yeah.
Mhm. Which I
Zeolite
know
was the
charcoal binds, but
zeolite is a more it's not just activated charcoal, it's zeolite is um a specific,
brand.
yeah, and it's got a really long name that I am not going to be able to pronounce.
Zeolite
Yeah,
clinopytila.
that. Yep, yeah, that. That really long clipto little light of, yeah, that one.
Okay, noted.
And that it's on Amazon. So, and you can also get it specifically from whatever the manufacturer they
Does
have.
Full Scripts have it? Do you know?
I don't think Full Script carries zeolite.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know.
But I mean, my preferred binders are generally not on Full Script anyway. So I'm waiting for Cellcore. And it would be great if zeolite was on there, but
Okay.
zeolite though is not in a capsule. It's just a straight powder. So sometimes for people, it's nice to be able to just have something that isn't a pill to swallow, which I think is why Jen liked it. And it was more particular than charcoal sometimes, which just kind of is an indiscriminate binder. So,
Joe, does it have as much of a constipation effect as other binders? Like that's the nature of binders, right?
yeah, some can be constipating. I think it's probably on a client by client basis, really. I have a lot of times the people that I'm working with are constipated anyway, so we're working on constipation while doing all this other stuff. So you kind of have to have them do both.
I mean, just the absorption of the water with it, right? Like that's
Yeah, make sure they're drinking enough water, make sure they're taking their binder, make sure they're getting enough magnesium, all the things, right? To make sure. But if they're having a lot of flares from an immune reactive point, right? Or just a lot of gut bloating, gas symptoms, things, then, I recommend adding in the binder. Because that's the last thing we want, right? Is to kill everything off and cause more of an issue. Stagnation and lower motility generally leads to greater bacterial growth in the small intestine, creating a terrain similar to the large intestine. So fiber can help prevent that and increase motility. Beta glucans is one of the fibers that is recommended for this. It's a polysaccharide. It is a soluble fiber. It modulates both metabolism and the immune system. It's usually found naturally in cereal grains, yeast, and certain mushrooms. So the source for the 1314 beta glucans is brown algae, oats, and barley. It can help lower cholesterol because it'll bind to cholesterol and help it get excreted out of the body. It can help feed commensal bacteria, so it'll modulate the microbiota, and then it helps reduce blood glucose levels. The 1316 beta glucans are usually from mushrooms or yeast. They have antimicrobial properties. They help with immune modulation also, and they also have anti-cancer properties. So some of the ones that were mentioned um, were shiitake, which are one of the most nutritious ones, and then turkey tail, which helps with any type of respiratory infection or post-cancer treatment because those will help increase the white blood cells, the macrophages.
Turkey tail is a
Mushroom.
okay. So
It actually looks like when you see it growing in the wild, it looks like a turkey tail.
so in our patients, we're probably going to say mushrooms because we're probably not recommending people eat grains and
Possibly.
maybe
I
brown
mean,
algae.
and this is the conversation that we were having though, is like when people take out all grains, right? And you stop having some of these other effects because you're not getting these in the diet. Like what happens then when you don't get the benefits of these? You can also, I believe, get them in pill form. So you can get
But if we think that grains might be causing an
right.
inflammatory,
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely.
then
Like we've got people that are not eating them, right? Because
right, but we wouldn't want them to ingest them in capsule form either, right? Because it was
no, but I'm saying you can get the beta glucans out of, I believe you
oh,
can get them in separate from the food source,
so do
or,
you don't think they would be cross reactive?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's what I'm asking.
I think I mean, it depends a lot on how they're processed and, where they came from.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of thinking like the yeast derived supplements, how you don't use them for certain people. I'm wondering if it's the same thing. If the source of where it came from,
Hmm.
I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
Yeah. It's one of those things where when we have clients that have gotten to the point where they're so reactive, and it becomes the self-perpetuating kind of thing where you have to cut out food sources and therefore you cut out these things that can modulate the immune system, that can build red blood cells, that can help with glucose reduction, but you're cutting them out, and it's kind of like when was it Tom O'Brien? Because he does the whole um gluten-free, right, thing. And also the flip side of the gluten-free coin is that you're cutting out all of these grains that feed the microbiome. So it becomes like you have to watch like how much of this, you're doing a good thing, but there's also could be harm happening that you're not going to see until, down the road. So everybody on the initial call with Jen had the same kinds of questions. Like what happens when you have clients that have a yeast and, fungal issues, right? How many of us have mold toxicity and we're not eating gluten and we're not having mushrooms and we're not having yeast? So we're not getting any of this soluble fiber from these sources that have these beta glucans that do these things in our body, and how do we replace that? It's an interesting conversation and something to think about. Um, so this basically is just another slide that kind of breaks it down and, has the benefits of these different beta glucans and what they do. Just a different thing. So, differences between soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, it was a nice little slide that you could share. feel free to cut this and share it with your clients because I think it's a really good. I don't think people really realize sometimes. Soluble fiber slows down digestion, assists in the body's absorbing vital nutrients from foods. It dissolves in the water found in the large intestine and forms a gel. It can aid in lowering total cholesterol levels and low density lipoprotein cholesterol levels, as well as improve glycemic index in patients with diabetes. Examples of food high in soluble fiber include oat, rice bran, barley, peas, beans, apples, apple pulp, citrus fruit, strawberries, and psyllium husk. Insoluble fiber does not dissolve in water and increases the movement of waste through the through the intestinal tract, has been associated with decreased cardiovascular risk and slower progression of cardiovascular disease, particularly in high-risk individuals. It prevents constipation and may also aid in removing toxic waste in the colon. Examples of food high in insoluble fiber include wheat bran, whole grains, rice, flaxseed nuts, popcorn, cabbage, beets, carrots, Brussels sprouts, turnips, cauliflower, apple skin, as well as other fruits and vegetables with skin.
So we need to be recommending both, right?
Yeah. When people have different issues, and, I think it's good to know what side they fall on.
And you gotta love Chat GPT. Did you do that in Chat GPT? Look how fiber is spelled.
Which one?
I was like, did you do that in Chat GPT? This one right here, because look how fiber is spelled at the top.
No, it's from that Nutrition Research 101.
Okay.
And which may be five. Isn't that usually the spelling, like the European
Like in the
spelling?
UK, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was
I think
thinking.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was just giving Chat GPT a hard time because anything like they'll do some really good graphics, but God, if you try to put a word in there, it just
oh
will
my gosh, I know
every
they're
time.
terrible, right? Like I had a whole bunch. I'm like, this is really
Delusional and
great. I'm just gonna
hallucinates.
have to repeat it myself because it's terrible. Um, so soluble slows down digestion, insoluble adds bulk and helps with constipation and has more of a laxative effect. So based on what you've got going on with your clients, this is another great chart to give them. I think it's important to have both kinds, but you've got people that have, once again, we have clients that have cut out all citrus, they've cut out all seeds. They won't eat peas, they won't eat cucumbers because they've got seeds in them, right? I mean, and they're really, they've whittled down their diet, and it's no wonder, that they're either constipated or having diarrhea all the time, right? Because they don't have a good balance of different fibers in their diet. And I think a lot of people just think, any plant has fiber, right? And you just need fiber.
You
But
know, it's interesting that so many foods don't have just one kind or the other of fiber. They may have more soluble than insoluble and vice versa. But like you take a
right.
sweet potato, it's got both forms of fiber. So there's so many out there that they can use that can give them at least a little bit of both.
Right. Well, and that was the apple, right? Apple pulp is soluble, but apple skins are insoluble, right?
Right.
So if you eat the apple with the skin, you're getting both. So I wonder if sweet potatoes are the same way, but because it says root vegetable skins have a
Mhm.
laxative effect. But then, you've got some root vegetables on the side that probably are the opposite. Um, so then we started talking about all of this when you start talking about this constipation versus laxative, and these were some of the questions that had come up, that we tacked kind of onto the end of this talk. So the MMC questions, and this was one of the slides that was missing last time. I'm like, so is the migrating motor complex triggered by our digestive juices? And is it a function of the body? Like a muscle flex, is the MMC flexing to get nutrients down from the stomach to the large intestines? Will the MMC be influenced by magnesium and potassium, like relaxing and contracting of the muscles that do that? And the reason we should wait every 2 to 3 hours to eat is that because once we start eating, it restarts the migrating motor complex. And if food and nutrients haven't made it all the way through, do they sit in the gut, which causes the gas? Because it could be over fermenting because of those bacteria feasting on stuff that shouldn't be there. So all very, very good questions, right? Like some of these things, we've heard, but, clarification on all of them. So the migrating motor complex repeats every 75 to 90 minutes during the digestive period. It clears residual chyme from the intestinal lumen. It prevents bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. The mediator of this is a hormone called motilin. It causes growling of the stomach in between meals. So, when you don't eat for a while, right? You get that gurgling, and that's the migrating motor complex reminding you that it wants to go back to work. This shows 3 phases, but there's actually a 4th phase also. The MMC, this is Mrs. MMC, helps to move food, waste, and fiber from your stomach through to your colon. The MMC is important because it also keeps sweeping bacteria out of the small intestine and prevents backwash of bacteria from the large intestine up to the small intestine. When digestion is complete, the MMC gets stronger for a while and it slows down as it gets closer to the ileum. If you eat again before it is done, it stops. And it's not just something small, it has to be a significant caloric intake. If you're sipping lemon water or having coffee or tea in between, that's not enough to restart, to stop it and restart it. It has to be a significant meal. So for people that are eating like every 2 hours, that you don't ever get that fullness and you're trying to extend their resting window in between meals. A lot of people are afraid of fasting. Have you found that with any of your clients that they're just like, yeah, no, I can't do that. I have to eat every so often or I start feeling gross, especially those that are really metabolically unhealthy. So trying to get them to extend that window slowly, if they're eating every 2 hours, make it every 2.5. And then next week, make it every 3. And then make it every 3.5 and get that window extended. So they do have a good opportunity to complete a full cycle.
I think the biggest problem I've ever had is clients that were hypoglycemic and they were just so afraid of experiencing that
Right.
they were always eating every 2 hours to make sure. And they've been told, well, it's
Oh,
because
yeah.
your blood sugar bottoms out. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want that to happen. So they're
Right. Right. And there's a whole, we can get into it, but there's a whole thing on metabolic and glucose and how do we, test that. And that's on the agenda coming up here at some point. So you guys let me know if you want me to move that up sooner or later or whatever. But there is that whole, I think there's 6 or 8 calls somewhere in there on metabolism and glucose and fasting and blood work around it and all that jazz. So the role of bile in regulation of gut motility. Bile appears to stimulate motility in the duodenum. In both humans and rats, secretion of bile into the duodenum precedes phase 3 contractions. Removing bile from the duodenum causes the disappearance of phase 3 contractions. So phase 1 is a prolonged period of quiescence. Is that how you say that word? So 40 to 60% of the time, your body should be in phase 1, just this resting, quiet period. Phase 2 is the increased frequency of action potentials and smooth muscle contractility, 20 to 30% of the total time. Phase 3 is a few minutes of peak electrical and mechanical activity. It lasts for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then phase 4 is when that activity declines and it merges up with the next phase. So growling stomach, that's your MMC hard at work. You might think it's a hunger signal, right? But it is that, that peak activity.
is that usually going to be at the end of the later phases then probably? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just
so it
wondering.
starts off, right, phase one is this quiet period, right? And then
Mhm.
phase two into phase three. And then it just comes in waves.
So I'm thinking if your stomach is that empty, because typically you do hear your stomach growling when when you've had a longer period of fasting.
Right.
So I guess my question is it in probably that phase three by the time when you start to probably hear that growling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. Um, so Campylobacter jejuni from food poisoning is the leading suspect in MMC impairment. Um, so what else can this bacteria lead to?
I don't know, but I had it in college and it was awful.
Where did you get it from? Do you know? Or where, I mean, is it
I think I got it from eating chicken parmesan at the Olive Garden.
Mine was from Applebee's.
interesting?
And it
That's the lime chicken.
I was in college and it was right at the beginning of the semester, and I remember my chemotherapeutics. Uh, I was so sick, and obviously couldn't stay out of the bathroom, and they had finally done a culture to find out that it was Campylobacter. And my professor said if I didn't come take the exam, that my final was going to count twice as much. And, that terrified me.
How
So
compassionate.
so
Right.
I went and took the exam, but I got up 5 times to go to the bathroom during the exam.
Yeah, we were down in, I don't know if it was Myrtle Beach or Florida or somewhere on vacation and stopped at an Applebee's. Um, and I spent the entire next 2 days of our vacation
This was weeks.
in the hotel room.
I was
I
sick for
had massive, I mean, I was already educated and I brought probiotics and literally was eating them like candy.
Well, this was college, and of course,
Yeah,
what your diet likes in college.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah. I was just like, I'm just gonna eat this entire bottle of probiotics until I stop pooping my brains out and throwing up. Yep.
So I mean, I'm just curious, did the health department ever follow up on either one of them? Do you know? I mean, because
I
nobody ever
didn't
knows.
report it.
Right, right.
I mean, I have,
Nobody else.
yeah, I contacted Olive Garden and they paid for all my medical bills,
All of your
Oh,
what?
nice.
all of my medical bills, because
That's good.
um, our insurance, we had a large deductible. I was on my stepdad's insurance, and so unfortunately, because I'm allergic to so many medications, whenever I needed prescriptions, most of the time it was always Cipro, which was a brand name back then, fluoroquinolone.
Mm,
So it costs $200 plus. Um, and I went to the health center, right? So my expenses were like as little as they could be. But yeah, they did reimburse all of my health expenses.
That's good. They didn't want a lawsuit. They didn't want you to call the health department. Although I would think don't they have to
I'm
report that sort of thing automatically when
I
they
don't know if Campylobacter is a reportable thing or not. It's on the doctor to report it if it is.
okay.
So like when we were testing here for strep and COVID and stuff like that, we as the provider, whenever we got a positive, had to report it to the registry. So it's the provider's responsibility.
I did not realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
all right. So Campylobacter leads to MMC impairment, which is going to lead to, come on, guys.
Oh, wait a minute. Was this a question we're supposed to answer? Okay.
Yeah.
What is it?
What do you
SIBO?
think?
I mean,
Well, MMC,
Who said what?
because
I thought I heard it.
dysbiosis,
is it
because
SIBO?
SIBO?
because the MMC acts as a cleansing, right?
Yep.
So it's downstream from the impairment.
So yeah, I mean, if you're not getting the MMC to clear out the small intestine into the large intestine, then it's a leading cause of SIBO.
Sure, because it just sits there.
Right. So patients with any dysbiosis, really, SIBO and IBS have on average a third as many MMC phase 3 events, with those events being roughly 30% shorter on average.
Wow.
So the minute you get any of that dysbiosis, that phase 3 is that 5 to 10 minutes of intense activity that pushes everything down into the large intestine. So this is why a prokinetic, the one that like iberogast, can be helpful to instigate the MMC to function. I know Microbiome Labs has their own too. They have one. I can't remember. Anybody know which one that is?
I don't know, but Iberogast is spending a lot of money on commercials.
Are they?
I've seen
They're
commercials
they're
about
really
it.
being I mean, I never heard of it before. I mean, taking functional classes and things like that, medicine classes you did, but I had never heard of it at all before that. And then all of a sudden it's like everywhere on the television being advertised.
Yeah, it is.
It's like crazy. It's like crazy. So I guess my
Right.
question is, so if I'm thinking this through and I'm saying, okay, if I've got this client and they do, maybe not ibuprofen every day, but let's say they do ibuprofen, every
Like,
other day or something like that,
yeah.
or frequently enough to cause them some gastric issues.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to slow down impact their MMC function?
Deb, do you know if there's
I wasn't listening. What?
Oh, she's asking a medication question.
Just
I
wondering.
really,
So
I
I'm
really
deferring to you.
I
I'm
really wasn't listening. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just thinking through this. So if, thinking of causes of dysbiosis, if you've got somebody who is taking ibuprofen, I don't know how frequently they would need to take it to be able to create something that would impact their MMC function.
Well, ibuprofen, the problem with ibuprofen is it strips the mucosal lining.
Okay.
That's the problem with ibuprofen and why it causes issues with the gut.
Right. So I guess over time it could create some dysbiosis, depending on how much damage is done to the stomach lining.
Well, whereas the MMC,
Well, it's in the small intestine, so I guess it's not
All
going to
the way
impact.
down.
yeah, see, I don't think
Okay.
I don't think the two are related.
Okay.
So the one that I was thinking of from Microbiome Labs, I just turned off my video and climbed up my shelf because I'm short. You guys didn't need to see me do that. Is MegaGuard, which balances H. pylori, supports normal digestion, balances stomach acid, and supports gut motility. Simple yet effective digestive and motility aid that combines licorice, flavonoids, artichoke leaf, concentrated ginger to support motility, balance stomach acid, and reduce occasional digestive discomforts like gas, bloating, and stomach upset. So that's the one I have, MegaGuard. Was the one that I was thinking of from Microbiome Labs. I don't know. Do you guys know what's in Iberogast?
I don't know.
You have
I
to
don't
look it
either.
up. So what hormone is the prokinetic replicating?
That one that started with an M?
Well, motilin is the one it does that, but also one that we can think of that when we have
Iberogast.
hormone, I mean, hormone neurotransmitter, I guess.
Iberogast has German chamomile, lemon balm, licorice, peppermint, caraway, and Iberis amara.
That's why
I
it's
guess
called
that's where
Ibero.
Ibero comes from, the Iberis.
So
I don't know the hormone.
I would think, well, it says
Is
hormone
it
here,
could
but then the answer is serotonin, which is more of a
serotonin.
neurotransmitter. Um, and those are the notes that I have on that slide, which I can't get to from the slide presentation, I don't think. That annotate? No, that's not going to work. So why do I go to the bathroom right after I eat? This is a little cute diagram. I find it funny that there's pizza and donuts in the stomach, but the gastrocolic reflex is a reflex that stimulates contractions in the colon that can lead to a bowel movement shortly after eating. Um, so I just think this is a cute little cartoon. Hey there, colon. It's your pal, the stomach. How you doing? Make some room. She just had pizza and donuts. Okay, got it. I'll start contracting now so I can get rid of what's already here. She'll be using the bathroom in no time. Ha ha ha. Oh, but there is a reflex that does that. So if you were wondering if that had anything to do with the MMC, it's a direct reflex.
It's an autonomic, I guess it's an autonomic response.
Yeah. So bile concentration from the liver will always be less adequate than from the gallbladder. Why?
I'll concentrate because when you get that big bolus, that's what causes the cleansing soak effect.
Yes, but
You-
why
you
is,
don't get it.
I mean,
Well, bile from the liver is going to
Because
just
otherwise, if you don't have a
drip,
gallbladder,
drip, drip.
it strips.
right. But the gallbladder actually takes the bile and concentrates it itself. It removes water from the bile and
Oh.
concentrates the
So
bile.
it makes it more soapy.
So it makes it more, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what you're getting from the liver is mixed in with the water and everything else, and it's less concentrated. And then when it gets stored in the bile or stored in the gallbladder, that bladder actually removes the water.
That's why it becomes gallstones if it sits there or it gets diseased because it's so concentrated.
So bile is also involved in circadian rhythm, and I am searching for her in-depth class on this, but there were some notes on it. So some of the current connections and future perspectives between the circadian clock and bile acid metabolism, as well as related metabolic diseases. Feeding and fasting cycles influence bile acid pool size and composition, and bile acid signaling can respond to acute lipid and glucose utilization and will help mediate energy balance, which is kind of cool. Disruption of the circadian rhythm, such as shift work, irregular diets, and gene mutations can contribute to altered bile acid metabolism and heightened obesity risks, which we know that, right? People that have crazy hours and are, keeping all sorts of different, schedules tend to be pudgier, right? High fat diets, alcohol, and gene mutations related to bile acid signaling result in desynchronized circadian rhythms. And the gut microbiome also plays a role in connecting circadian rhythms with bile acid metabolism. All neat stuff.
High,
So,
go back again.
go back. I'm going back.
Just where it says high fat diets, alcohol, and gene mutations related to bile acid signaling result in desynchronized circadian rhythms. Can you explain that more? I'm not sure
It might be on one of the next slides.
okay.
And these are things, like I said, these are things that she was. So unfortunately, when Jen was doing the research for these classes, a lot of it was she was finding conflicting information.
Sure.
But these were some of the things that she had noted that she was going down the rabbit hole on. And there's another whole class on this that she was putting together. So I'm hoping to find it. But these were some of the things that some of the connections that she was researching. So let's see what is on the next one. Circadian rhythms are biological systems that synchronize cellular circadian oscillators, molecules, cells, and tissues, with the organism's daily feeding, fasting, or rest activity cycles in mammals. Circadian rhythms regulate nutrient absorption and utilization at the cellular level and are closely related to obesity and metabolic disorders. Bile acids are important modulators that facilitate nutrient absorption and regulate energy metabolism. So I know we always think like, oh, bile soap and bile's this and bile's that, but this connection with the circadian rhythm and how that all works was really kind of neat. And then this was some of the, and I remember her going over this, but this was one of the, how the different bile acids and bile reabsorption like fit into that. But she said she was going to explain this diagram in her talk, and she just stuck it here to keep it. And so I stuck it in here. But
It would be
interesting
to hear that
stuff.
talk. Yeah, I would really, if you find that talk, that would be one I would really like to hear.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because I think about it, like so much of, what is wrong with the culture, right? Is this wanting to burn the candle at both ends and wanting to work when it's dark and all the artificial light and all of that playing into the circadian rhythm. And I know we talk about it with sleep so much, right? And you need to sleep to repair, but thinking about how bile plays into that and how nutrient absorption plays into that,